So there was a time when, at the time I was working day in and day out and overworked and also quite underpaid. And I think this is, something that happens predominantly in the media industry as a young journalist. And if you don't fight for what you want, you don't get it. And you kind of, shrink yourself to believing that this is as much as you're going to do. So, learning from that made me realize that, you know what, girl, like, no one else is going to fight for your life except you, and no one is going to understand the journey that you're on.
Hey, Karen, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Fella. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to get into this. Okay, so on the podcast, we like to start all the way from the beginning. So I want you to take us all the way back, take us to your what it was like for you growing up as a child, your primary school life, high school life,
Yeah.
all of it.
Oh gosh. Where do I even begin? So my childhood is quite a very complicated, long story. Basically, I'm born to Malawian parents, and I was born in Malawi. But 3 months after my birth, my dad got a job in Ethiopia, so we had to move there for about 3 years. So that was, my baby infancy years were growing up in a different country altogether. And then 3 years after that, 1997, we moved to Swaziland for 10 years. So that's where my primary school, parts of my high school, took shape. And also, being someone who's foreign, growing up in another foreign country was also quite a big transition because I had to learn the local language. So as it stands today, it's hard for me to even talk in my mother tongue because of just how many times we moved a lot. So, that was quite a beautiful journey. Trying to transition into a different space altogether. But that's literally where my foundation years took form and took shape. And I learned a lot in terms of understanding the Swaziland culture and traditions. And then post high school, I went to an Anglican school for 2 years. All girls school, very crazy, but also very, such a great building block in terms of who I am today, because it was so demanding and really growing us up into adulthood as teens. And then my dad got another job again, and we had to move to South Africa for about six months. So that was, it was another shocking kind of transition into that space. But already, Swaziland and South Africa, not that far apart. So it wasn't too much of a culture shock. But the biggest move that was for me was after those 6 months, we have to move to Kenya. So East Africa side. And
That's number 5 now. That's country number
country
5.
number 5, yes. So, that was, going into that, it was like, I just literally just made some new friends. I'm a young teenager, and, you're going through adolescence. So, moving was such a difficult part of the process because you have to adjust to the situation, adjust to the climate, the types of people. And of course, making new friends is always such a difficult thing as a kid. So, I resented my parents for that. I remember on the plane going there and I was crying, and my mom was like, don't worry, everything is going to be fine. At least it was like we were all together as a family. So this wasn't just, my experience alone, but everyone else's. And by the time we got there, and I started schooling at an international British school, so everyone at that school was foreign. Like, it was mixed with
Okay.
people from Mexico, people from Cuba, people from the UK, like China, everywhere that you can think of, and a lot of African countries. So, that as I transitioned into that, I really, enjoyed the space. And till today, Kenya is one of my favorite countries to live in. So I was there for about 2 years. And then from that point, we moved back to South Africa, now full time. So that's 2012, and into me going into my university years. So this is where I now began my varsity. And I remember the time when we came here, it was, switching from the British system to the South African system is also quite a tricky thing because the curriculum is quite different. So it was hard for me to, number one, get into some of the big top universities in South Africa just because of that qualification difference. But at the time, there was a private institution that a friend of mine had recommended. It was like, no, try this place out, which was at the time it was called Midrand Graduate Institute. So I applied, went through there, and yeah, started my journey in my undergrad studying
Yo.
journalism. And
Woo. Questions. I have so many
all right,
questions, right? Like, so okay, to be specific,
yes,
there's a lot more questions I want to ask. Number one, I also want to know from you, like that experience must have been so hard going through it, but I do believe that there's always a lesson learned. What did you learn from moving around and living in so many different spaces that you obviously probably in hindsight
yes.
you can only see it in hindsight, right? What did you learn from that experience that you think shaped you as an adult now and or in your career now? That's number one. Number two, I want to know how you went about, especially with all the changes that were going on, because now you're navigating changing environments, changing the people around you. How were you even thinking of what you wanted to be as when you grew up? And yeah, how did you decide what you were going to study?
That's actually a very interesting question. I honestly did not know what I was going to study. Thankfully, my parents were very strong in education, so I also had that mindset that what, education is key. The whole
Mm.
wisdom part of it, and I was fairly good in my grades and academics, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Whether it was IT, that was something I loved. Whether it's geography, but to top it off, I just wanted to do something creative, but something
Mm.
creative, but also still considered a profession because when you think about the arts a lot, especially from an African culture, it's parents don't really see the value in that when you go on to get a job. So like you can go out and easily become an actor. There's just so many challenges in those fields. So thinking about exactly what kind of field would allow me to still be creative, but also um, you know, kind of bring in the money that perhaps my parents would have wanted at the same time. So,
Mm.
the moment I got into varsity and we had to pick our choices, it was like kind of a trial and error. Like, this isn't going to allow me to explore my creativity. This isn't going to allow me to, then journalism was my last point of view. But now when I think back about it, growing up as a kid in Swaziland, so my mom used to love watching her soapies and everything. So I knew it was Days of Our Lives and the Oprah Winfrey Show, and then so I would watch everything with her, including the Oprah Winfrey Show. And at that time, she was literally the only Black woman that was dominating the media industry worldwide. And I was like, I really want to be like this woman. I admired, the way she handled herself. I admired the stories that she would allow people to express themselves on television and just create the safe space for stories to be told and critical stories to be told. And, at the time, I would take my family's video camera and pretend I was interviewing my teddy bears. So, it was such a, one of those things that you don't really think about, but it was embedded. So
Yeah.
it made me realize that actually, since I was a kid, I always wanted to do this. And I was always inquisitive. So even the fact that, going into different countries and spaces, I really was able to mold myself. So I became a cultural chameleon and was always passionate about learning different cultures, different languages. And yeah, that led me to, finding my space and my home in journalism and storytelling.
Mm. Yeah. And what lessons did you learn from your childhood moving around and adapting to different spaces that you feel are helping you out in your adult life?
The first thing is appreciating Africa as a continent, number one. In my
Mm.
career now, I can like strongly say that I've positioned myself as someone who's quite passionate about the continent and passionate about stories that come from our continent and just pushing the African narrative because there's just so much beauty around. And traveling from Ethiopia to Swaziland to Kenya and to South Africa as well, I've been able to see a lot of beautiful people, a lot of beautiful stories that don't necessarily get told on mainstream platforms. So that allowed me to really want to be someone that can help at least contribute to that narrative and pushing more positive African stories just because of the background that I've had and honed.
Mm. Wow, that's amazing and that's very important actually what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're in varsity.
Yes.
Tell me about what it was like studying journalism and not and don't say journalist because we know that's what you are, but like what did you how what career path did you see yourself taking post varsity?
um it now into varsity, my undergrad, it was quite fun. I enjoyed most of the process, but there were a lot of hiccups here and there, particularly looking at what's the future going to look like. Because, no one really, if you don't find a lot of opportunities, then it's hard for you to just get into the industry, because it's also based on who you know and all of these other factors. So I remember in my second year, it was one of the toughest years for me, because it was that point where, you've passed first year. Now you have to think about, what do I want for the next step before you get into your third year. And I remember my parents asking me, like, do you think you're going to make money off this? Is this a career that you really want to be in? Because it's
The
so
African
tough.
parents.
It's such a tough industry. And also, number one, being, an international person in a different country was also something that I had to consider. That, is this a space that I'll be able to tell stories in, or would it be a little bit challenging for me? So, all those questions culminated me going through a very rough patch, and also just, doubting whether this is what I wanted to do, and did I choose the right course. And, it pummeled me into a period of depression going through that. So it was very, very hard. But, along the way, I was able to get some help, and I was seeing a counselor for that. And, it was just, God, also the voice of God just saying, just keep going, just keep going. You've gotten to the space, and there's no harm in just taking another year and continue until you're done with your third year. So by the time I got to my third year, it got even more intense, because I was triple majoring in my modules from politics, English, and broadcast journalism. So now into that space, there was just a lot of work thrown into me. I also now took on a lot of responsibilities within positions such as the House Committee program at school, all these things. And I was also writing the school newspaper at the time. So it was quite intense juggling all these things. But it really helped me learn the value of hard work and dedication, and really just, showing me that I can push myself, and I can really, I'm unlimited. There's just no limit at the end of the day. And yeah, then my final exam required me to produce a documentary. And at the time that was happening, I luckily had saved up some cash, so I got my first camera to at least shoot that. But at the time I was shooting, something major happened. It was quite windy at the time, so my camera literally fell down and broke apart. So I was like, God, what are you doing? And this assignment is due like in a week. And
That's painful.
right? And the funny thing is, at that time, there were two people in my life that sent me a link to an ENCA internship program. So for us to complete our third year, we had to do an internship program as part of, the course curriculum, in order to graduate. So I was like, this is actually something I want to do. Like, mobile journalism is something very new in the journalism space, using your mobile phone to shoot content and actually execute everything. So yeah, luckily I had a good friend that, borrowed me their camera to finish my documentary. But at the same time, I was also producing this piece for that ENCA internship competition. And, juggling both at the same time at the final year was a little bit of a stretch as well. And yeah, a few weeks later, we had to upload it onto YouTube. A few weeks later, I got a call from the managing editor at ENCA, and they were like, "Hey, we saw your video, and apparently it's the most watched video during the time of the competition, with around 800 views at the time." And I'm like, "Okay, so what are you saying?" And he's like, are you available to come for an interview with us? And I was like, yeah, I absolutely am. So,
Yeah.
that was the next step. And the rest literally became history for me after that.
Oh, wow. What a journey. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now take us through. Okay. So that was your first job post varsity, then,
Yes.
I suppose. And take us through um, what your whole journalism career has been like since then.
It's been up and down. It's been the most beautiful as well, but also the most challenging as well. So our year at ENCA was literally one full year, and there it really helped me grow in so many ways, from working on television, producing content for television, but also online. So that was quite 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 an interesting journey, and there were 12 of us as part of that internship program. So we had such a great support system with each other, and some of them right now are doing amazing stuff. Some of them are still at ENCA, some are in different spaces, but it's always nice to see those faces on television and different spaces. So after that, I decided I wanted to do my postgrad, my honors degree at WITS, and luckily ENCA actually had a scholarship slash bursary that they were affording to pursue their studies. And I applied, and then I got in, and then I got the bursary to be one of the students that was ENCA was sponsoring for the honors program. And now at WITS, that's where I majored in financial journalism. I also made amazing, great friends, and it was such a very intense program as well, because sometimes we'd find ourselves in the newsroom until 12 midnight, roaming around looking for stories, trying to meet deadlines. Because apart from the coursework, it was also part of you actually writing stories for their publication, the Wits Vuvuzela. And that was intense. I did not have a social life that whole year. Actually, we all didn't have a social life at that whole year. But it also made us grow into like a very close-knit family as the postgrad students there. And after that, I decided I got the opportunity to go back at ENCA, but work on a contractual basis. So they were producing a show called ENCA Backchat, which is for youth, and allowing youth to have their own voice and talk about, youth issues. And, that was quite fun. But the only problem for me was that it wasn't a stable form of income, because there was no guarantee that I'd be there long term. So I was still, while I was doing that, I was still looking for opportunities to come. And one of our former heads of department sent a job that was for Forbes, and they're like, Forbes looking for a journalist, Forbes Africa, Forbes woman. And I was like, hey now. I looked at the job description, I looked at everything, and I was like, God, this is me. Like, I did not see myself in any other space except that. Like, out of all the jobs I was applying for, I was like, this has to be it. There is no way. Because it also just, spoke about things like, is this person passionate about Africa, story. And I'm like, yo, like, hey, what are you saying? So I applied for that. And I remember at the time I started putting stuff into existence. I was learning about the power of writing down your dreams and your values. So I even wrote down my name, Karen Mwendera, at Forbes.com. So that was what I put down just after I sent my application through. And a few weeks later, I got a call back, and they're like, can you come for an interview? Cool. I went through, and I met with the managing editor of Forbes. I also met with the HR manager. So these two women sitting across the table interviewing me, asking me questions. And it was such a stern interview. It was like, I honestly didn't know how I did the whole time because there was just no expressions. It was just blank. So yeah, that was fun. And they gave me a task to do. So I had to tell a story, anything relating to, the African continent. And I did something around Airbnbs in Soweto. And yeah, submitted that story. She loved it. The editor loved it. And that was my first published piece for Forbes Africa.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. First of all, like, I'm so happy for you because, like you said, it does feel like it aligned so well with really who you were and what you were trying to go for. You've interviewed so many people and so many
Yes.
interesting people,
Yeah.
including Naomi Campbell. There's many more, but like for me, I love her. So
Me too. Me too.
yeah. So what's been your most interesting interview that you've done?
Sure. Oh my God, that is a very I
You can
don't
give us
even
like
know.
a top three.
Top three.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you interesting bad and interesting good, and then just
Mm.
random. So interesting
Mm.
bad interview that I've ever done was a story I literally almost got sued for, and that was when I was still a student at FITS. So this is a story that I broke around a lecturer having a student lecturer affair, and it was kind of it was illegal on campus grounds. But the issue around that was that you had to declare it before that happened. So the situation was that this lecturer this lecturer's girlfriend was in his class. So there was also a lot of speculation around favoritism, the student getting more marks than others. So a lot of the students in the class complained, but it was very underground. So with the editor there at Vids, we published the story, and the title, I'm still embarrassed about the title of the story, but it it was written, "Lecturer has hanky panky with students." And I'm like, why? Why would, editors sometimes.
So you broke a scandal.
Yeah, it was very scandalous. It was so, and it made front page. And after that, national news also picked up that story. So, ENCA 702 started picking it up, and, the whole country was talking about this affair. And I'm just like, goodness, I did not think it was going to get this much reception. And then lawyers started emailing me like, you need to take down the story. It's defamation. Otherwise, we're gonna proceed to legal action. So I immediately alerted my editor that this is what I got. What are we gonna do? Luckily, they were so supportive. It went to the head of the faculty. From the head of the faculty, the dean of Wits, Adam Habib, also had to get involved. So the whole Wits organization had to get involved in trying to maneuver around the story. So because we followed journalism ethics, the story didn't get retract. What they wanted was for us to retract it and also issue an apology. But all we did was just issue out a second article just saying this is what's happening. And unfortunately, we cannot retract it because it is true. And, we did offer you guys an opportunity to comment. But yeah, that was hard because even my social media, I was getting a lot of hate mail. I was getting a lot of, bullying comments here and there. So, after then I was like, I don't think I'm cut out to do, political journalism, like, especially, that kind of, investigative stuff. Because I think my personality as well is quite positive. So I always, try and lean towards more positive kind of stories that make an impact. But dealing with people's lives, that's something, I think that was a big learning curve for me, and trying to find my feet in the whole journalism industry. I was like, I don't think I'm really cut out for this, because it really affected my mindset and just, my eagerness to want to continue this path. So yeah, going into Forbes, I think now my second most interesting interview that I've done. I would say my first cover story with Connie Ferguson. So she's such an amazing soul, and I love that story because it was, number one, my first cover story ever. And my editor, she's one of those people that's just like, she trusts you, and if she trusts you and gives you this responsibility, you really have to give it your best and your all, because there's a reason why she does that. And it helps you grow. And I was quite challenged in that situation. I was also quite nervous because I'm there fangirling, because I'm already a fan of her, but I'm like, I have to be professional. Yeah. But we had such a great time. She really made the process quite easy, and also quite fun. And also learned a lot, getting in depth with her story, getting to, understand this media mogul that went from acting to brand endorsements to owning her own media house and media brand. And that was quite a, a powerful journey that she had to go through. And even through that, like, some of the challenges that she experienced as a woman in the entertainment industry was also quite interesting to learn about. So, that I would say was perhaps one of the most interesting ones I've also done. Let me think about another one. Yeah, and Naomi Campbell on the top, I would say also is quite an amazing one, because it actually happened at the Global Citizen Festival. And there was selected media that was allowed to do media interviews. And at the time, we were late to actually apply for that accreditation for the interviews itself. But we were there under media. So even just getting into that interview process was just by sheer chance and by luck. So the whole process was happening. There's a lot of people at the stadium, and my friend and I were like, what, let's just go try. Let's just put ourselves, get into the media room and, see what happens. So we get there, and the person that I was speaking to, luckily, was actually Naomi Campbell's manager. And I was like, Forbes Africa actually just wants to interview her and, get a thought process around Africa and the work that she's doing here. And we're like, yeah, no, definitely. Then the next thing, they're setting up the interview. I'm standing there, and I was not dressed for the part because it's a red carpet event, because I did not expect myself to get there. But I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyways. So that happened. She was pretty chilled, pretty down to earth, very tall. So I was just like looking at her like, girl, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful,
Yeah.
and very calm, collected. And she gave some great insight in terms of what she thinks about the landscape of Africa and the kind of work that she wants to do in terms of the fashion industry. And that was nice. Above and beyond her, we also got to interview Debanj on the same carpet. Who else? A couple other people also from the UN and part of the Global Citizen Festival. But all in all, that was just a really great experience.
That's a big lesson in when opportunity is here,
Yes,
just
just
grab it.
grab
Just grab it. Don't
it.
overthink it too much. If it's here, grab it.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so now you are. I'm gonna exaggerate this
Yes.
for fun. So I know you're gonna correct me, but you choose the Forbes 30 and the 30.
More or less, yes.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. So that's crazy. How did you get to the role of Forbes 30 and the 30 curator? And also, what does it actually mean to be the Forbes 30 and 30 curator?
um all right, let me start with your first question. Getting into that, I was actually supposed to work alongside one of our colleagues at Forbes, but the same year the list was going to come out, she was leaving. So my manager or editor was like, "Hey, Karen, do you think you can do this list by yourself?" And I'm like, whoa. This is actually my first time doing this list. This was 2019. And at the time, we were doing 120 candidates. Usually it's 30. But for that year, we wanted it to be big and something special. So it was
Okay.
120 people across the continent we had to find. So I'm like, yeah, I could try. I could definitely try, but I was scared. I was literally panicking deep down. My anxiety levels are just raising up. I'm like, what is this woman doing to me right now? So yeah, I think that was also such a lesson for me because it's like like you said, when opportunities come, just grab it. And sometimes no one's ever ready for some of these opportunities.
Mhm.
Sometimes they don't chase you, they chase you. But as long as you show up and give it your best, and that's what I really tried to do. So in that year, I was doing it by myself. One woman, sleepless nights. I remember days when I would cry because I was just like, this is just so much work. It was intense.
And pressure,
And so
right?
much pressure because you're working towards a deadline. And on top of that, this is my first time. So the person before me who did it had left. So there was no opportunity to say, oh, she's going to hold my hand and take me through the process. None of
Yeah.
that.
Mm.
So I was literally learning as I go. And that was such an important moment for me because that literally culminated my career as a curator for the under 30 list going forward. So being part of the curating team basically means that you're in charge of, number one, sifting through the candidates, because we do a nomination based system, but above and beyond the nominations we also hunt for certain people and then ask them to nominate themselves. But you're in charge. It's such a big responsibility because you're in charge of, number one, finding these candidates, vetting them, verifying whether they meet the criteria, bringing them towards a panel of judges and as well as the editor. And you have to convince them why this candidate deserves to be on the list. And they also have to go through their documentation, which include their financials. So I was now learning about business finances and audits. So I was becoming an audit
Mhm.
person as well. I was becoming a researcher. I was becoming so many different skill set in that. And I was also in charge of doing the videos because that's my skill set in journalism. I was mostly a video journalist at the time, so I would shoot, edit, put together, and produce the videos for Forbes Africa as well. So I was
Sure.
tasked with doing so many things at once. And once the list came out, that was just such a breather for me and such an amazing experience because we had our under 30 meetup, which had Mohammed Douji's the world, so I mean Africa's most biggest billionaire. We had Bonang Metebe, who was also the keynote speaker at the event as well. So it was just a beautiful thing for it to see it come to life and actually see all these Africans come together in Joburg and meet up for the first time. And that's when I was like, yo, this is actually, such a fulfilling job. Like, it's such a fulfilling responsibility because you get to see beautiful talent. It's also quite inspiring because you're seeing people your age mates doing amazing thing. And it's like, yo, you can also do this. You can also, get involved in something bigger than yourself. And it was such a beautiful thing to see and learn about young Africans that just wanted to change their communities and wanted to change the way the world looks at Africa, all in all. And yeah, so the next year I did it again by myself, so 2020 list. And then this year, 2021, luckily we were able to have a team, which was alongside Chanel Ratif as well as Simone Umro. So we three of us had to work together on the list. It was much, a much easier process, but still the vetting process was still as endless as it was.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the most aspirational lists. Well, one of the lists that most people aspire to be on. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of pressure. And the fact that, I mean, it's, you have to look across all of Africa. That's a lot
Yeah,
of
that's a
people.
lot of people.
You need to know what's going on in that country, who are like in
Exactly.
the different categories, sports,
Exactly.
entertainment, whatever it is. You need to be like kind of well knowledge, well versed in every country, and that's a lot. So I can imagine when you say you had sleepless nights, days where you were crying. Of course,
Yeah.
like it's a lot. Sure. Okay. And just in case someone's listening here and they're just curious, what does it take to get on that list?
Ooh, girl. Yeah, it's quite a lot. So our process, as I mentioned, starts in the nomination phase. So first step, nominate. The link is always on our website, so you can actually go see more in terms of it. But depending on the category that you want, there's different criteria that we look at. So business and tech, we'd basically be looking at, has your business been running for at least 2 years? Then from there, we'll also ask for your documentation around that. We'll look at you as an individual. We'll also look at your impact and your growth story. So apart from the documents people submit that include, police clearance, because we also have to verify, do you have a criminal record
Sure.
or not? We have to verify people that have worked with you. So we'll ask for references, but we also look at for our own references for people to say, what kind of person are you? And, I think that process has also helped me in terms of, finding out if people's legit, because like you said, a lot of people want to be on the list, but there's a lot of
Mhm.
people that, that make up stuff, or they want to be on the list, but they're not really passionate about what they do. They just run a business for the sake of running a business, or as that kind of, I just want to make money. But the thing about the
Yeah.
Forbes Africa 30 and 30, because it's such an aspirational list, we pride ourselves in the fact that we're not just looking at the finances themselves, but we're also looking at the person and their growth story and their passion for what it is that they're doing. And that comes out a lot in terms of the way they tell us about why they started doing what they're doing. And, you'll see a lot of it comes from, what solutions are they providing in their community. We've had people that would come
Mhm.
up with ideas in terms of solar panels because they grew up in situations where every day they would study day and night and not have electricity. We had amazing people like this one entrepreneur in Uganda who, her mom died from cancer because of the way hospitals there were not as advanced to detect cancer. So now she created this innovation that uses tech and helps women in villages to actually detect cancer before it gets really
Oh,
extreme.
wow.
So a lot of the stories are they're so beautiful and so endless. And when people think about Forbes, they always think about billionaires. So this person has to be making a
Yes.
million, which is such a great plus. It's a bonus. But at the end of the day, we're not saying that you must be a millionaire alone, because you could literally take over your family business that would have been making millions a long time ago, and you have a step up the ladder. But we
Yeah,
want those stories of
exactly.
people that literally started from the ground up, trying to build what it is that they started to get to where they are. And that's what I think sets the Forbes list apart from any other list on Africa, on the continent, because we look specifically at those qualities. Within the creative space and the sports space, we'll look at, what's your proven track record. Again, you have to have had a record for at least 2 years. So doing what you're doing, whether you're a musician, whether you're a painter, you're an artist, at least 2 years of a track record. And why we always focus on the 2 years is because we've seen people that would do amazing stuff in the first year, and then the second year they just fall off the wagon, or there's no some sort of, there's no sustainability. Because the moment you have that Forbes stamp,
Mm.
is basically saying that we believe in your vision and we believe that you have what it takes to really put Africa on the map. So we have to see that this is someone that's consistently been doing this, and they have a vision for their dreams and the business or what it is that they're doing. So we'll look at those things as well. And yeah, then the whole process is quite, it goes over for months. So you could even nominate yourself today and only receive feedback in 6 months time. So it's not the kind of thing that, you send in your submission and that it's done. We go through such a rigorous process. We get
Mm.
over I mean, this year we got, I think, plus over 1,000 to 2,000 nominations. The previous years we got about 3,000 plus. It keeps growing each year, and it's quite, it's quite intense going through all those emails. So the tricky thing is now we have to go through all those emails and really look at, what is this person, what is their business model, is it innovative, is it something that's groundbreaking? And then we also work alongside an audit partner. They will now vet the finances, and in the finances we'll look at, the profits and loss. We'll look at how much money you've made, and the thing about that is we don't necessarily have a specific cap to say this is how much money we're only going to consider, because every industry is different. Someone in the tech industry
Mm.
would be making a lot much different money compared to someone in maybe a creative industry. So we also try as much to look at the industries themselves and look at what, and based on the judges that we have, they also provide their opinions as to what do they think about this business model and their finances, and is this something that's groundbreaking in that industry or not necessarily. So yeah, the process is pretty much in a nutshell as such.
Sure. Okay, that's intense. So
It is.
yeah, now everybody knows. Not like you submit and like there's a system that just runs through and
Yeah.
shortlist or anything like that. But that's really intense, and it's about more than just. I love that you're saying that it's about more than just the money, because there's so much more to people, to businesses,
Yes.
and to just the work that people do on the continent. I absolutely love that. You also, on top of everything else that you do, like, sorry,
I
you
love it.
also now started your own company.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
I did. So I run a company called Afrikaren Media, and
I
we
love the
actually
name, by
start.
the
Oh,
way,
thank
Afrikaren.
you.
I love asking people why they name the company certain names, but like yours is like just then I'm like, of course, Afrikaren. I love it.
And our mandate is to help Africa tell and host critical conversations and impactful conversations as such. So we're in the business of storytelling, but mostly at the moment, because of the way COVID has happened, we started on a more digital base. So we provide solutions to webinars, so providing webinar hosting. We also curate webinars for different companies, and
Mm,
and most of the companies that we've worked for so far are very, very innovative. They're coming up with different ideas in terms of how to problem solve issues around Africa and the continent. So we look at that. Apart from that, we, like I said, we also have a podcast coming up, so that's in the works, and just content creation, leading towards that. But the main goal would be, number one, to help really drive more conversations about solution based ideas on the continent, whether it's from young
mm,
people, whether it's from old people, just coming together and discussing critical issues that can have solutions that people can provide. Yeah.
okay. And what's the biggest difference between running your own company in this media world versus working for a company?
I'd say number one, the flexibility, because I guess right now we're really bootstrapping, because I still have a 9 to 5 job as well. So it's been quite a slow burn, a slow process, and I'm also learning as I go. And I love the fact that I can be flexible and really pivot myself in terms of what kind of stories do I want to tell, the kind of companies that I want to
Mm,
work with. Whereas when you're working for a newsroom, you are forced to feed this big machine that needs to be churned, content needs to be churned day in and day out, that you don't really get a chance to breathe, or you don't really get a chance to tell the stories that are very passionate to you, because each media company has its own agenda, and its own
mhm,
focus. So now I can really look at stories that I want to tell, stories that I think Africa needs to hear more and more. And I work with a team of two young ladies as well, who are my former students. So we work very well together. One of them runs our digital platform. The other one helps in terms of the research and writing content. So it's been quite a growing journey. But the one thing I must say that's been so challenging is the admin. I do not love admin stuff. Like, I'm that person that says, let's do it. But admin
Yeah.
tells you to slow down, make sure you've got the parameters in check. And, that, whew, nobody prepares you for that.
Yeah, I can imagine, and that's probably not something you have to deal with so much when you like in the
Yeah.
corp in the not corporate, but like in more of a typical 9 to 5. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And what if somebody was listening here and they wanted to follow in your footsteps as a journalist and just creating a multifaceted career in media and journalism like you have? What, let's say, top 3 things would you tell them?
Uh-huh.
Three is my magic number.
I would say learn as much as possible, and don't shy away from, expanding yourself. The history of journalism was predominantly that if you wanted to do print, that was it. If you wanted to be a photographer, that was it. If you wanted to do video, that was it. But now, the way the world is going, the way the industry is going, it really requires you to be an all-rounder. So learning all those skills all together, and it can literally take you places, in so many ways, and you literally become your own media company yourself, because you can do the visuals, you can do the photography, you can do the writing, and you can also do the anchoring as well. So I would say, don't limit yourself to just one skill set. Try as much and broaden your horizon. And then secondly, this is a quote by Lucky Dube, if I'm not mistaken, which says, "Be good to the people on your way up, because you might meet them on your way down." And I say that because the media industry is very small. The people you work with today, you're going to meet them tomorrow. If you go to another company, you're going to meet them again there. So I
Mm.
think it's always good to, wherever you're leaving, leave on good terms with people, even the people that you interact with, because sometimes you'll meet someone on the bus, or you meet someone, in a public area, and you never know that that person's story would be the breakthrough that you actually need for your next, story. So, that's a lot about how contacts are made. So just be a good person in every space that you're called in to be, and don't ever look down on another person and be like, what value is this person going to bring to my life? Because it might not be now, but in the future, there's always great opportunities to collaborate. And they scratch your back, you scratch yours. It's all this ecosystem in which everyone needs everyone else. And then I'd say thirdly, just dream big, like vision what it is that you want for yourself. um the industry is changing so much that the typical journalist nowadays doesn't even work in a newsroom. People Companies need journalists to tell their own stories. Companies need journalists to push out their own stories. So you don't always have to think about it working with like a big newsroom company, but how you can use
Mhm.
that skill set in different spaces and different companies. Also, you're still adding to that. So it's such a skill that is so versatile that you could literally work anywhere in the world. And that's the beauty of it. It just requires you to think about it. What do you want for yourself? Which spaces you want to go into? Vision it, write it down, moon board it, whatever it is that is your thing, and strive towards that.
And since you said that, what is your vision for Karen? Karen, the founder of a media company, the journalist, award-winning journalist. But also Karen, like the daughter, the friend. Like, what is your vision for yourself?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. It's so hard for myself to see myself separate from what I do, but I'm gonna try to answer that. I mean, the some of the future plans that I have are to do my masters. But I want to be someone that in the next, couple of years, 15, 20 years, my name is something that people will learn about in textbooks. So I really want to, add to the whole media theory, because now, even as it stands, a lot of the theories that we're learning about are predominantly white men, and men that were born in the 1940s and 1920s and 1800s. And it's like, where are the black people? Where are the black women, and where are the young people that are there, and those voices are not there. And I think I would really love to be someone that also creates knowledge than just report on knowledge that's out there. I want to really contribute to shaping policies around media in Africa. so yeah, that's I guess the long-term plan. And yeah, just build a family and be happy and perhaps live on the beach.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Karen, tell us about a mistake or a failure or misstep that you've gone through and what you've learned from it in your career.
Oh, there's been so many. There have been so
Yeah.
many mistakes. Let me think about that. I also don't want to expose myself.
Yeah, don't give out too much, but
Yeah,
just enough for us to learn from it.
something to learn from. I would say not um, fighting for my worth. Yeah, because, and I say that because it also has been a hindrance to my growth in a lot of different ways. So there was a time when, at the time I was working day in and day out and overworked and also quite underpaid. And I think this is, something that happens predominantly in the media industry as a young journalist. And if you don't fight for what you want, you don't get it. And you kind of, shrink yourself to believing that this is as much as you're going to do. So,
Hmm.
learning from that made me realize that, you know what, girl, like, no one else is going to fight for your life except you, and no one is going to understand the journey that you're on. Because I remember when I left the industry full time, when I left Forbes full time to lecture, a lot of people question, like, why do you want to go lecture? Like, you still have so much to do in the industry. There's just, you can still get to editor and whatnot. And I was like, no, sometimes even like your mental health is something to really look out for. And if a place isn't really, allowing you to grow, then you have to now make the decision to grow out of it yourself. And yeah, that was something that took me time to get to, because I think, when I came into the industry, I was this meek and feeble, naive young girl who believed that everything was all rosy, that, if you work hard only, that everything is going to come to you. But you can work as hard as you want, and if people see that, that's just it. But it doesn't mean that you're always going to get everything that you need. So you need to make that decision to position yourself in a way that you can grow to where you want to be, regardless of, what other people tell you about your journey. Because at the end of the day, the responsibilities or the decisions you make will impact you and not the other person.
Hmm.
So yeah, I had to learn to get myself out of that mindset, and really just trust the process.
Hmm. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, trust the process. Okay, so now we're at my favorite part of the podcast where I get to ask my favorite question,
Okay.
which comes from my favorite quote, which is be who you needed when you were younger. That's my favorite
Be who
quote.
you need when you're
Uh,
younger. Okay. Love
yes.
that.
I love that because as much as we can never go back in time and change anything that has happened, if there's someone we needed to see or something that we needed to hear when we were younger, there might be someone out there today that needs the same. So, if you could go back in time to any point in your life, it could be you in primary school, high school, it could be you starting your career.
Yes.
If you could go back it could be yesterday, you were younger. If you could go back in time and chat to younger Karen, what would you say to her?
I would say, don't put an age on your achievements. So, and I think that was something I did a lot. Like, by this age, I need to do this. I need to have achieved this goal. I need to have kids, be married at this age. And I'm still 27, 26
Can,
now.
can I just say something? Can I just say something? That's ironic because you create the Forbes September 30 list. And like 9 years later, I'm just like,
Like, girl. No,
okay,
I'm gonna tell you
I have a
something so embarrassing. Like, till today, I don't even have a driver's license. And that's why I say that. I know. Look at your face. You're like, girl. Which I
come
need to. I
on.
need to. I know. I need to do that. I really need to get that. I can drive though. It's just I don't know
You shouldn't
why.
be.
Like, I
You
don't know
shouldn't
why I keep failing the driving test. But hey, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep trying.
Okay, so yeah, I disturbed you, but yes, don't put an age. Don't
Yeah,
put an age limit,
don't put an
please.
age limit to your thing. I mean, to your achievements. And start with what you have. Start where you are with what you have. Sometimes we always wait for the right conditions to say, this is when I'm going to be able to do this. Once I get this, I'm going to be able to do this. But you don't have to wait for anyone but yourself, because time waits for no one. So, really start with whatever it is. If you want to build that business now, do it. You don't have to start a company to start a business. You don't have to register a company to start a business. You can just start where you are and what you have. Or even when it comes to, writing to other young journalists out there, you don't have to wait to be hired to create content. You can have your own online blog. You can start a podcast. There's so many great softwares out there that allow that. So, really just whatever it is that you want to achieve for yourself, don't fall into the trap that you need other conditions to allow that to happen. I mean, it's great that you'll have certain things happen, but you honestly grow into the spaces that you want to be at.
I love that. That's beautiful. Don't put an age limit. Don't wait for something to trigger the next
Yeah.
chapter of your life. You can be almost 30 and not have a license.
Oh, girl. Can we edit that out, though?
Age, honestly, it's true, and I love that. You don't have to have, like, you don't have to follow what society says you should have by this age or anything like that. Yeah, I love that. Okay, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. How can our listeners, our viewers, get in touch with you, or just follow your journey, follow your company and the work that you do?
Awesome. So you guys can reach me on at its_Karen M on Instagram and Twitter. I'm quite active, especially on Instagram, and our company is www.afrikaren.media.com. So that's still in the works, but you can also follow our media pages on Twitter and on Instagram, and also on LinkedIn, which is Afrikaren Media. So yeah, I look forward to engaging with you guys. So yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Fellow. This was amazing. It was so much fun.